whether it's a poem, a novel, a memoir, a short story or a song. We think every creative endeavour is valuable and deserves to be shared and remembered through publication or performance. We have adopted the words of John Millington Synge as our mantra and motto that poetry must have its roots in the clay and soil of our communities. Our goal is to make literature more accessible and exciting, to celebrate the wisdom and lived experience of real people in Ireland today in their own words. We want to catch you, we want to surprise you with how we bring poetry and prose into your everyday life, to do as Seamus Heaney said, to catch the heart off guard and blow it open. We believe that art and literature are for everyone. If you're new to writing, don't worry, it's a skill you can learn. And as you do, your inner artist will start to shine through. We also like to remember what Frank McCourt used to say: keep scribbling, something will happen. We believe that the act of writing is what really makes one a writer. It's a kind of a ritual, and rituals are the heart of art. In our programme, we focus on creating high-quality, short-run titles that anyone can pick up and enjoy. We encourage all writers, whether you're pursuing a serious career or writing for fun, seeking healing or striving for personal growth. Over the years, we've produced a wide range of works, from poetry and short stories to novels, histories, memoirs, and a variety of mixed prose. Books, even as a simple technology, are still a powerful way to connect people and communities. So we are very proud that our books capture snapshots of living and evolving cultures, and that they will last for many years to come as a record of events, people, places, feelings and ideas. We hope that this legacy will be passed on to future generations of writers, or artists, or singers, scribblers, folklorists, especially those with a love for Limerick, but also for the beautiful surrounds of this country. Sometimes, as Samuel Beckett has said to have put it, words are all we have. Sometimes we look within ourselves, at our hometown, our nation, or at events with global scope, and see how they reflect on the human condition. The words in this book, The Life Dancing, are a superb exemplar of this, with about 60 pieces that take us through stories and memories, family and home, bardic rhymes in poems like The Life Dancing and Scar, which echo in the image of a monk at work in the scriptorium, among a series of poems informed by history in section 3, after examinations of national politics, international conflict, and sometimes the dark nuances of global commerce in section 2. Cathy, of course, lives in Selbridge, not far from here. She won the 2023 Poetry for Patients competition, achieved second prize in the Waterford Poetry Prize 2020, and was shortlisted for the 2023 Yeats Tour Ballylee International Poetry Prize, as well as the 2020 Trim Poetry Festival and the 2019 7th Bangor Poetry Competition. Her poems have appeared in the Irish Times, Poetry Ireland Review, Books Ireland, Ropes, Skylight 47, The Milk House, Flair, and forthcoming from the Honest Ulsterman. Her short stories as well have appeared in Brevity is the Soul, Stories for the Ear, and Point Berries. So on behalf of Revival Press and the Limerick Writers Centre, Gurmina Mahagat, Catherine Ossokan Desha, who are doing the Céad Cnús of Filialta Curraglow. Thanks to Barbarstown Castle Hotel for hosting this event, and to Ger Duffy for the upcoming official launch. A special thanks as well to the rest of our team at Limerick Writers Centre, especially Catherine Shields for her design work. I'm sure you all agree that the book itself has turned out absolutely gorgeous. Buying this book supports the author herself and other Revival Press writers too. But more than that, it's a real pleasure to read and ponder these thought-provoking poems. So, congratulations, Catherine, and now to introduce Ger Duffy. Ger Duffy lives in County Waterford and is originally from County Offaly. Her poems have appeared in PNR, Poetry Ireland Review, Banshee, Cormorant, Under the Radar, Southward, the Ekphrastic Review, the Sailor Review, Bangor Literary Journal, the Milk House, Skylight 47, Howl, and forthcoming in Pranolat. Welcome, Ger Duffy.
Thank you, Tom and Revival Press, for publishing Cathy's book, and thank you, Cathy, for asking me to do the launch. When I close the door, my father's coat slow dances against the dark wood. So begins the opening poem. The dancing coat beautifully evokes a life lived and ended. This poem was a worthy winner of the Poems for Patience Award in 2023. This elegy maps a father who embodies both strength and vulnerability. His dark shoulders that bear a darkness coming, and the stunning last line of the poem, the last of the light dancing on his wet boots. In another poem, Scar, the light is ominous. The reddened tip became the only light he let in. The light dancing is the work of a poet who has lived, to quote Whitman, a multitude of lives, as daughter, mother, librarian, wife. These experiences are stamped on these poems, and the collection is all the better for it. There is a strong element of taking stock, of looking back over life to a childhood and naming those who made the journey easier. These are poems which embody gratitude for a life lived and acknowledge sacrifices made. Many of the poems in the collection deal with love in one guise or another. Love for a parent, relatives, children, spouse. The collection is full of carefully crafted poems that articulate an unflinching realist vision, softened by the redemptive power of love. The variety of poems in the collection span themes about growing up as a beloved daughter, to poems about a classroom encounter with the incoming New Irish, and the privileges we enjoy, guilty, as part of the First World. There is a mixture of embedded rural sensibility and an urban sense negotiating this modern life with its comforts and contradictions. The collection showcases the poet's instinct for juxtaposition, as a disposable coffee cup becomes a meditation on the exploitation of coffee plantation workers that enable our coffee culture. The poet's eye and ear range widely and respond to and critique this world. The miracle of the ordinary is celebrated here, in our recognition of the sacredness of ordinary objects, a car, a pair of boots. At my grandmother's house, my father's car rocked like a pram in the dips and hollows. And the butter dish is filled with small fetal shapes, corrugated and perfect, as though conceived to last. The cover of the collection is foregrounded by a pair of muddy farm boots. Her poems are a lesson in verb usage also. The cigarette ashes towards his lips, and boots ring loud in the long quiet of goodbyes. In these precise poems, everyday objects are free of any sentimentality. The chopping block sat centre stage in the front yard, where years of slaughter had left their mark on the red oak, and he plunged in elbow deep for the glossy innards. Many of the poems have detailed descriptions of the familiar suffused with loss. Rooms grew quiet as a tomb as I entered, and that sense of a life suddenly stopped is well drawn. Where you remained, ghostly as the half-knit sock my father still kept. And on our carpet, the marks of your shoes from that last weekend. Conlon describes the absence after a death well. For years, you were no more than a photograph. And he slow steps the floor, leans into her absent face. She handles this subject matter sensitively in her selection and precision of images. Rain hung in the trees, and on her cheek a mark where a briar had left its own rosary. It is in the articulation of her language that the talent of this poet shines. When the lullaby of prayer ended, rain fell from the trees, trembled the puddles at my feet from burial. In Christmas rites about the killing of a turkey, she writes, blood arced into December air, fell in a crimson trail on tinsel bright flags. There are echoes of Heaney's influence in the poem The Meadow. When he pitched the hay, the fork sent 2 ribs of light into the air, and the tram rocked beneath my feet, its perimeter sudden and unsteady, with its intonation of uncertainty. These are scenes as we know them, but nobody else has written them quite like this, with such delicacy, precision and care. The subtlety of Conlon's use of sound rhyme is evident when the lullaby of prayer ended and the spade sent the clay clattering on the coffin lid in burial. The musicality of her writing is not limited to consonance and alliteration. There was the Sunday choir of pots, the kettle reaching its highest note. The poet's short lines offer wisdom that beguiles the reader. In the cradle of my palm, your downy head rests. My fingers reach the fragile shape of bone, the line of heritage that pulls us ever back in newborn. She also offers us her hard-won wisdom, the knowledge that nothing is more present than the past. These poems give the reader a sense of entering a world where reality is faced, but consolation is offered too. In filling the spaces, your blue handwriting filling the spaces across the years until I could almost remember. In the poem First Sunday, a poem about birth, snow is tiny white wisps that begged for life. The poems leave the reader pondering their own life, their relationships with parents and children, and find apt descriptions for both here. The resilience of the human spirit is foregrounded in many of her poems. In the poem Playing Dolls, the poet juxtaposes young girls playing with Cabbage Patch dolls with the mother and baby home scandal. We watched as our infants were taken. We watched in the way small girls watch other children playing dolls. With the North as an ever-present troubling backdrop while growing up, Conlon writes of a Belfast gardener who describes lifting out human remains from a bomb site with his bare hands. And how through it all, he stood his ground, planted seeds and bided his time until the flowers appeared in the crumbs of clay. And in Beyond the Border, the news of bombing, riots and bloody corpses did little to stir our play. On parenthood, the poet excels. Your birth blue gaze connects us, fills the space between 2 minds. And when you stretch, small limbs abandon their structure, free fall in the sureness of your hold on me, and only your hand in mine speaks. She also unpicks commonalities in the experience of linguistic oppression in the poem Lingua Franca. Across the divide of the classroom, our common words unite. All of us speak the same language. And her redefinition of the word crack as an Irish word for how we conceal the fissures. Throughout this nuanced and diverse collection, the poet's language remains evocative. When the American poet Robert Frost described poetry, he wrote, "Poetry is when an emotion has found its thought, and the thought has found its words." In this collection, I think we have an example of what Frost was talking about. Each word is carefully chosen. Each line is a finely crafted depiction of emotion, revealing subtle shifts in relationships. Conlon is expert at capturing moments that others sidestep, whether it is the contemplation of the lives of the homeless, who sought refuge in stained armchairs and looked at me with eyes full of catastrophes I knew nothing of, or of the background of growing up with the war in Northern Ireland and describing going through a British Army checkpoint. I was sure their ears cocked at the mention of the short strand. Home, you could have said, but didn't. And in the poem, The Side We Walked On, describing a near assault, when I asked you how they knew, you said it was the side we walked on. In the light dancing, the poetic gaze is insular, often domestic and retrograde, but the poet finds the redemptive glimmer of hope in the light, in relationships, and in the natural world. She explores the female gaze in an emotionally charged world, and she writes of roles assigned to females: enchantress, mistress, the legend of Deirdre and Nisha, and finds a parallel with this and a local forced marriage. And she also writes of the lasting inheritance of the memory of Anne Lovett. Her description of interacting with her immigrant son is also particularly well defined. Coats you have no use for in that hemisphere hang empty. And I am calling after you to take care. I am calling long distance. And planes boomerang between our homes. You are neither here nor there, but somewhere in between. These poems are a masterclass in the use of specific concrete images. Cathy's use of imagery is deft, but it is her selection of images that leaves a lasting impression and packs an emotional punch. Things you own gather dust in plastic tubs, a blue sweatband, a fake ID card, and an old mobile that always rang out in my early morning quest for you. Her work is characterised by qualities of attention, subtlety and precision, with understatement being one of her most important tools. She is excellent at blurring the lines between the present and the past. You are sitting yet at your desk, books for your leaving cert spread before you, and even now we strain for a glimpse of him, standing there yet, looking out for us, from looking out. These are poems of formal ease and control, whittled down to the bare bone. From lost to love, the poems are in communion with one another. The voice in these poems is intimate and honest, confessional at times, but not overly so. The compressed language allows for every image to shine. In the poem Monument, she writes, "Let there be a monument to heroes, an edifice of stone. Inscribe it with the names of those who tend us, at life's beginning and at its ending." At the base of this collection is the theme of the past haunting the present. So it is fitting that in her penultimate poem, she explores the Greek mythological figure of Lycosus. Her advice to us is to look over your shoulder, see Anthropos, with shears in hand, bright blade glinting. In short, this is a highly accomplished and beautifully poised debut by a mature poet at the height of her powers. It is a collection to read and to treasure. I would like to conclude my reading by reading some of the comments from other notable poets about Cathy's work. Award-winning poet Cathy Conlon weaves an intricate tapestry of human experience, delving into the delicate interplay of memory, loss and resilience. These are poems to be savoured, offering readers a rich, rewarding journey through the complex terrain of the human heart. Ethna Lannan, author of Earth Music and Everything Gathers Light. The domestic rubs shoulders with the untamable. Libraries and coffee fans jostle with Anthropos and her shears, or the wolf boy of Hamelin in poems that are rewarding and unpredictable. Peter Sir, author of Marginal Zones, Intimate City and The Swerve. Cathy Conlon's poetry displays a formal pose. Her soft-spoken poems summon up truths, haunting static moments. The slit pig outside the barn. In the cadences of our language arrive so many moments of sheer beauty. John Noonan, author of Shades of Whitethorn. Lastly, formal yet sensitive, steeped in memory and precise locale, Cathy Conlon's poetry is a joy to read and to reread. It is this storytelling as moral craftwork that makes Cathy Conlon's revival collection so beautiful and so welcome. Thomas McCarthy, author of The Sorrow Gardens, Pandemonium and Plenitude. It's my pleasure to give you Cathy Conlon.
Thank you very much, Ger. I'm not sure if I need to read any poems after that. You read most of them. But thanks again for that. And thanks to Tom Collins and Dominic Taylor for publishing my work. And indeed thanks to everybody who's made the long journey here today. It's much appreciated. So I'm going to begin with a poem called Lingua Franca for years I worked in schools teaching English as a second language, and the one question the students asked was, why don't Irish people speak the Irish language? So this opened up a conversation about colonialism, and it expanded into the whole idea of when language is suppressed, people rebel. And they do it, or the Irish at least did it, in a linguistic way. So this is where slang came from. They deliberately botched the English language. We're speaking English. Yeah, we're not. And I love that idea. So this poem is about that. And lingua franca. Sao Paulo, you say when I ask where you come from. I stumble over surnames while you mispronounce the names of these Dublin streets. When you ask about heritage, I tell you of a lacerated tongue, the tally stick that measured a child's crime for speaking the Cúpla Focal. I say that crack is the Irish word for how we conceal the fissures. In faltering English, you speak of a shared history, how the vernacular became the lexicon of rebellion. Across the divide of classroom, our common worlds unite, all of us speaking the same language. So this next one, smelling the coffee, and just basically, I'm talking about the exploitation on the coffee plantations. Actually it was, the poem was written as a response to a prompt given to me by Tom McCarthy. And he said, write a poem about social malaise using the idea of drinking coffee. And my first response was, well, how could I do that? Because the two things are so different. So then I began to look at the idea, of the exploitation on the coffee plantations, which is the greatest epitome of social malaise, really. So, smelling the coffee. Before the daily grind, I'm drawn in, intoxicated by the aroma of fresh roasted. The barista calls out the Wi-Fi code to the artisanally acquainted. Briefly, we debate the demerits of the disposable cup. He tosses his head, all smiles and white teeth, decorative as the drinks he serves. I head out, head down, mouth grazing the too hot plastic lip. Last night's documentary still brewing. Those workers, slaves of the coffee plantation, their day's labour worth less than my coins rattling in the till. I feel them eye me from afar, their silent stares taking in my full throwaway cup. And this poem addresses the conflict in Ukraine. And I remember seeing, when the war first broke out, I remember seeing musicians standing at the shores of the Black Sea, and they played music even though the war was going on behind them. And it reminded me of a short story written by the great Russian writer Kukin. And he wrote about a Jewish musician called Sasha, who played the violin. And because he was Jewish, the authorities inflicted terrible injuries on him, and they broke his hand to stop him playing the violin. So, not deterred, he turned to the harmonica to continue the music. Resistance. Yes, so the poem deals with the idea of art as resistance. In the cities of the dead, in the shocked and shelled streets, musicians play. The sound of revolution drifts across the barricade of sandbags on the shores of the Black Sea. Like Cooper and Sasha, nothing will stop their music. When his broken hand could not play the violin. His mouth found the sweet notes of the harmonica and set them soaring above the blast of bombs and guns, the blustering fire. So, closer to home, and kind of not the same thing, but not too far away from what we were talking about in Ukraine, beyond the border. When I was a child, I was very aware of the situation in the north, and I think I kind of had an unhealthy interest in it actually, because I remember being told, I pick up the paper to read about it and I'd read it aloud, and I don't know if anyone remembers me doing that, but I remember being told to go out and play like a normal child, which is absolutely what I should have been told. And so, strangely enough, I'm married and have so, and of course we compared our childhoods, and obviously very, very different. So this poem explores that idea, beyond the border. Only a province away, though it might as well have been a different sky that hung over your Belfast childhood. Beyond the border, the news of bombings, riots and bloody corpses did little to stir our play. We were used to carnage, the slit pig outside the barn, blood thickening on the ground, the fox marauding the henhouse, leaving only feathers and shells, and the discarded globes of unhatched chicks clumped in hedgerows. And when the green, white and gold flagged a distant horizon, it all assumed a filmic illusion in the technicolor images on TV. None of it as real as the blood blackening on the ground outside our window, the tarred and feathered hedgerows. I'm going to need a drink of water. Sorry, everybody. So on the same note, just addressing the conflict in Belfast, I remember one time in my innocence when I was in Belfast and we were walking back from the town one day, and suddenly Tommy said to me, "Run." He grabbed my hand and said, "Run." And at first I didn't know why were we running. And the next thing I looked up and there was a mob bearing down on us. And we ran for our lives, really. And I like to think this is divine intervention, because suddenly a police van came around the corner and stopped, and the mob retreated. So we lived to tell the tale. And I lived to write the poem. So here it is. The side we walked on. They'd have lynched us, that mob darkening the Belfast hillside, the day we walked back from the city. I was new from the south, unschooled in the hate dividing your homeland. They bore down on us like wild beasts in for the kill. We ran, our feet flying over the cracked pavements, past the murals of Tone and Emmett. Later, when I asked you how they knew, you said it was the side we walked on. And so and this next poem is also on that theme as well. I have a lot of poems about the North, actually. And this is about my father-in-law, who loved his garden, And so I went to him when he was doing the garden, and he'd be telling me all kinds of stories about, things that happened and whatever. So this poem explores that. Gardener. Old age had him reminiscing in the small allotment, the Catholic side of Belfast. He'd rip out handfuls of weeds while he talked about the ambushed church, the boneyard teeming with bullets, the Strand Bar bombed, and men like himself barehanded as they lifted out what was left of those buried there. And how through it all he stood his ground, planted seeds and bided his time until the flowers appeared in the crumbs of clay. So this next poem, Raven. When I was a child going to school, my favourite day was Friday afternoon, because the teacher would read a story to us, and I think it was the only time I could ever actually listen, because I had a huge problem with concentrating and all that. So, but I listened to the stories. So, and this poem is about the legend of Ger Duffy of the Sorrows, where Ger Duffy was being forced to marry the old king. And of course, up until recently, this happened in Ireland, and young girls were, forced to marry people that they didn't want, old men, rich old men. So the poem explores that idea. Raven. Fridays we read from a book of Irish legends. The myths romanced the long afternoon in that sultry classroom. I favoured Deirdre, fleeing with her young lover from the shackles of the old king. The words painted a scene so real I could see the coal black hair of Nisha, his white skin and blood-red lips. The snowy hillside where Deirdre had seen the raven flying over a dead calf. When the tabloid leaked news of a young girl's forced marriage to an old farmer, it was as if a bird had frozen in flight over the slaughtered calf, the virgin bleeding snow. It's hard to hold the mic and turn the page. One question that's often asked is, where were you when you heard about the Twin Towers? So, I was working in the Island Library that day, and afterwards I was reflecting on it, the Twin Towers obviously is a massive thing on a global scale, but one thing I did notice when I first started working in the library, it was like it opened up a whole new world to me, a world that I wasn't familiar with, because the libraries are mostly situated in the toughest, most poverty-stricken areas of Dublin. And, suddenly I came face to face with people who were homeless, people who had addiction problems and all kinds of social problems that we wouldn't have dreamt of before that. And so I'm kind of juxtaposing the Twin Tower thing on the catastrophes that people endure day by day that we don't know anything about. Ground zero. I spent the morning shelving books, wheeling the returns trolley over and back across a hard red carpet. Finger-tipping dust jackets smeared with grease and jam, pages reeking of decay. I kept order, stepped around housewives searching for Mills and Boone, students with book lists learning the Dewey Decimal System. That library was home to the homeless who sought refuge in stained armchairs and looked at me with eyes full of catastrophes I knew nothing of, shielded as I was in that ivory tower set high above the city on the top floor of a shopping centre building. What would it take for it all to come tumbling down? A plane falling from the sky, crash landing, until nothing survives but the stories themselves. Now, the next one. Okay, I had a different sequence. Sorry, I had a different sequence of this, but I'm kind of changing that. This one is Limbo, and it's about my first son, who emigrated to Australia. And I often think about how different it is now when somebody emigrates, because years ago somebody would go away and the past would be left behind, so to speak. But now the lines are blurred and they have a foot in both worlds. And I often wonder, are they aware of that, or is it me just as the parent who's lived through a different time, and that there's no clear delineation between the two worlds. Limbo. Coats you have no use for in that hemisphere hang empty. And it's strange to stand in this room still so full of you. You're sitting yet at the desk, books for your leaving cert spread before you. When I knock and open the door a fraction, a gap wide enough to push through a Mars bar, a can of Coke. Your relatives hands implicit with warning. Don't come in. Don't talk. Don't ask questions. Things you own gather dust in plastic tubs. A blue sweatband, a fake ID card, an old mobile that always rang out in my early morning quest for you. These days, WhatsApp and FaceTime keep us in touch. Open the door to your world and mine. Planes boomerang between our homes, and you're neither here nor there, but somewhere in between. The next poem is about when my youngest son, and started school. And I had this idea, like a lot of parents do, he's going to miss me, and he won't want to go to school, whatever. Not at all. He raced ahead with the other lads, and I was left with my hands hanging until we got to the classroom and things changed. so starting school. The blue school bag is too big for your little back, and the new uniform makes you suddenly smaller. Behind you, my hands are free, loosed to your will. I imagined a child with dark eyes. Instead, your smile is proud, eager towards bigger boys. In that room, where tears echo on tiny faces, there is a silence between our eyes. Only your hand in mine speaks. So this next one is about the experience of having a newborn. And in theory, we all know that the parent is in charge, but anybody who has a baby knows the child calls the shots. We don't ever command. Newborn. In the midnight kitchen, your birth's blue gaze connects us, fills the space between two minds. In the cradle of my palm, your downy head rests. My fingers read the fragile shape of bone, the lines of heritage that draw us ever back. When you stretch, small limbs abandon their structure, free fall in the sureness of your hold on me. Don't have one marked. My camera is better. This is about the secrets that adults keep, And the child, of course, is always observing, and children know more about adults, I think, than adults realise. But anyway, so this is at my grandmother's house, kind of self-explanatory. Summers brought us to my grandmother's house. My father's car slowed on the lane, rocked like a pram in the dips and hollows. I could smell the kitchen from her apron, turf smoke and splashings from the pan. The scent of warm bread in the circle her arms made. On the breast of the chimney, a black and white photograph was cherished. My mother smiling into a future taken for granted. My questions remained unanswered. Across the wide wound of the heart, my grandmother's eyes were brimful and blue. She offered distractions, busied me at the table where she magicked butter cards from a yellow slab, filled the white butter dish with small fetal shapes, corrugated and perfect, as though conceived to last. Oh, maybe I'll put it on this next slide. Okay. Won't be all but the same. Enchantress. So this is a poem after a painting by William Waterhouse after Ulysses of the Sirens. Most people will be familiar with it. Enchantress. My red hair is a net that will catch you when you fall for my come-hither charms. Each strand will bind you tighter than the rope that holds you safe to the mast. You call me enchantress, a creature conjured from earth and sea to lure you to the underworld. You stop up your men's ears that they may not hear me. You call upon the son of Apollo to charm me from my singing. But listen, here is my siren song. Let its scales fill your ears, flood this watery grave where no melodies of Orpheus will silence me. And the final, I'm going to call on Larry and my two good friends, Larry and John, to read after I finish. And so I'm going to finish my section with the title poem of the collection, and it's a childhood memory. The Light Dancing. When I close the door, my father's coat slow dances against the dark wood. It is old, this coat, marked by many winters, labours of a lifetime done. I imagine him in the front yard, screening sand for the new extension. Coat collar upturned against the breeze, a cigarette ashing across his lip. There's a light in his eyes when I stop during play to prattle and hear him say, "You're the best woman in the house." Now, coming from the big field, the day's farming done, his great hands in deep pockets, dark shoulders that bear a darkness coming, the last of the light dancing on his wet boots. Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, if I could ask Larry Doherty, a poet from Thurles, he's going to read What Moses Saw. And then John Noonan will follow. John is from Longford, but also lives in Dundalk now, and he will read.
Scar.
I can't read my own writing.
Scar.
Scar.
I'm delighted and honoured to read at Cathy's launch. Cathy is originally from Tipperary. We're claiming her. Today she joins the roll call of great poets from Tipperary, Dennis O'Driscoll, Michael Cody, Eleanor Hooker, Michael Jurek, and many more. So, well done, Cathy. This is called What Moses Saw. When he parted the waters, did his gaze, falling through time, chance upon a vision, a red sea of bodies, begotten by the children of the children he brought to safety. did he know the sound that bombs make as they fall? The screams of a child of war.
Good afternoon, everybody, and a big congratulations to Cathy on the launch of her gorgeous collection, and also a big congratulations to Revival Press, who I believe do more work for poets and poetry in Ireland than anybody else. So I'm delighted to read this poem called Scar. The cinder tip glowed at the side of the barn, where he'd stand in the dark, taking long, secret puffs, as though tobacco-stained fingers and smoke on his breath were not a dead giveaway. His blighted heart, the end result of all that tar. And yet, the scar that was there long before smoke found its way inside him, before the reddening tip became the only light he let in.
Thank you, John and Larry. Cathy, I want you to sit with me in the front now and we'll do the Q&A. And sorry, after the Q&A there'll be book signing, book sales hopefully, and tea coffee at the bottom of the room. Hope so. That was a great reading. Can you start by telling us a little about the impulse behind your writing? What started you off?
Well, I always wrote, even as a child, and I was lucky enough to be given great encouragement at home for writing, and you know, I was brought up by my aunt who taught me, and so that encouragement was there, and also in school, you know. So right along the journey, people were telling me, keep writing, and you know, so that's really.
Wait, that was in Thurles, County Kildare.
It was in outside Thurles, so we're, you know, a little town, kind of Ballingary, if you ever heard of it, outside Thurles, yeah.
I think there's more than one in Ireland.
Oh, there is,
Yeah.
there is.
The title, The Light Dancing, is
Yeah.
intriguing. Can you elaborate on its significance and how it relates to the themes in the collection?
Right, okay, so I suppose looking back on it, I was a very observant child. I took note of little details. And I remember walking through the fields one day and just seeing my father's boots, and I knew that there was a darkness around him, but the child in me, I suppose, looked and saw the light. I suppose that's the only way I can describe it. And yeah, so I remember seeing because it seemed to me as a young child that the light was dancing. And that idea, I like to think that that idea permeates the whole book.
Yeah.
That there's darkness and there's light, because how can you describe any life other than that way?
Yeah.
That it's full of light and dark.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you. Your collection is divided into 3 sections. What inspired the structure and how do these sections relate to each other?
Right, I like to think that it kind of reflects the individual's progression through life. So in the beginning of the book I have a lot of personal poems, and it's a little child taking note of everything and kind of trying to understand their place in that world. But then the child grows up and they're more in tune with the geopolitical world, we'll say, and the personal is kind of left behind a bit, and you're more in tune with what's going on outside me and my world. And then the latter stage is mythology and legend, to reflect the last stages of somebody's life, where storytelling is a marker of old people's lives. And they reflect a lot, but they love to tell you their stories, whether they're real or not.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Totally.
So that's what that.
That's great, thank you. Your poetry is full of precise visual images, which I was very impressed with. How do you approach creating visual imagery in your writing?
To be honest, it actually comes accidentally. I don't. I see. Maybe it's just because that's the way I've always seen things, very visually. Yeah, I don't put a lot of effort into
So it's down to the initial perception.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You choose your words carefully and keep your lines short, in this book at least.
Yeah.
Often there's slant rhyme, vowel work, alliteration and consonants in your poems.
Yeah.
How aware are you of creating opportunities for the musical possibilities of poetry when you were developing this collection?
I had some awareness of it, obviously, but again, a lot of it just came naturally. Yeah. I would think of something that happened, an experience, and then the words, because I think a lot of writing happens outside of yourself, and I do believe that the writer is only the medium. There's something bigger at work, and you're just the channel. So I don't think any writer should pat themselves on the head and go around go, listen, I'm right. Because I don't believe that. It's kind of alchemy.
I would agree with you. I'd say the initial impulse, but I do think your work is crafted. So I suppose that's what my question, was about. So it comes very naturally to you. That's great. How much time did you spend developing this collection? Would you say what period?
Maybe about a year. Where I decided. I sat on the manuscript for a long time, and then I decided, it's time now to send it out. So I had a look at everything, and then just decided,
Did you have a theme in mind for the collection when you started out, or did that theme emerge as you were compiling the poems?
No theme. Okay. The themes emerged. According to whatever impulse arose in my head or whatever idea came to me. So I sent Tom a hodgepodge of ideas.
Okay. And how many of the poems that you wrote, how many of them emerged completed first draft, if any of them?
Starting school was one.
Okay.
And also I wrote a poem about Johnson Swift's relationship with Vanessa.
That one.
Yeah, that came after one visit, and it was just almost, I don't know where it came from. But
Gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
William Stafford, the American poet, published over 800 poems. His publishing rate was one poem in every 8. There are 60 poems in this collection. Roughly, what percentage would that be of the poems you've written so far? The 60 you've published? No.
Yeah, possibly, probably about 70%, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So your percentage rate is better than his, maybe. Do you hold on to every draft of a poem, or would you throw away work you're not happy with?
No, I generally hold on to it, even though I know a lot of stuff I write, I'd say, no, it's no good, it's rubbish. But there might be a line in it, and I'll say, come in handy.
Okay.
Yeah, so
hold on to it.
Yeah.
And where do you stand regarding whether you think poetry can be taught or not? Like, if it is kind of in the air and there are channels for it, where do you stand on that whole idea of whether, you can do an MFA and become a better poet, or whether it's all natural?
Yeah, I suppose, the elements of poetry can be taught, like form, all that kind of thing. But I think there has to be a voice in the poem that you can't teach. Nobody could teach Seamus Heaney.
Yeah.
That voice, that way of connecting with the listener or the reader, and his way of seeing the world. Because to write the poetry that he writes, we just use him as an example, you have to see people. And Seamus Heaney saw, when he writes about his parents, he saw them. He saw them when he was a child, in the way that most children won't see their parents or caregivers. And it's that vision that he carried through his life. Yeah, so you can't teach that. Okay?
Great, thank you. What are your plans for the future in terms of writing?
Well, okay, I have a couple of poems for the next collection that will be out in about maybe 45 years. And after that, I'm putting the finishing touches to a play.
Okay, so while you mentioned that, you have written in other forms, you've written short fiction and drama and poetry. Are you happy to move between all three forms, or does one form in particular, the form you like to write in?
Yeah, well, poetry would be my first love. Having said that, one thing I love about drama, I've had a few plays performed where I discovered the absolute bliss of sitting in a dark corner and watching everyone else walk my words across the stage. You can't beat that. So I love that part of it. But in terms of the actual writing, poetry would be the first love.
Okay, thank you. Here we go. Now, if you could invite three poets to dinner, dead or alive, who would you invite and why?
Oh, Sylvia Plath, because she's so weird and angry and I love people who are weird. I wonder why. And so dark, but also so honest, because it takes honesty. Her poems are angry, but it takes honesty to be angry.
Yes.
Because people think they have to be nice all the time. So she'd be one. Paula Meehan, because I love her work, and I want to hear more about this ancestor who was a keeper of the brothel.
Oh yes.
Did you hear about that?
No. No, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I did hear something.
It's a great story.
You could tell us.
In the bar. And Tom McCarthy, he's just great fun. He's a great story. Now, I know he's not a poet, but if I could have Sebastian Barry for dessert.
I have to correct you on that. Sebastian Barry is a poet, started off writing poetry, yes.
I know his father was a poet.
No, The Pinkening Boy was his first collection out in the 70s. I have that somewhere at home. So right now is the time where the audience can ask Cathy a question. So if anybody would like to ask her a question, just put up your hand and I'll bring the mic around. Start with who I know.
Hi, Ger, thanks for that. What poet or poems do you remember? I think we all were drawn to poetry when we were in school, primary school, probably even quite strong rhyming poetry. But what would you remember of your school days, if anything, or in secondary school?
Very little, John, to be honest. I actually can't know. You've put me on the spot here because I can't actually think of anything at the moment that struck me. I wasn't a very good listener in school. No. But later on, poetry didn't actually, to be honest, poetry didn't really interest me in other people's poetry. Didn't interest me when I was going to school. Because when you look back on it, and I've read some of it recently, it's very arid, it's very confusing, possibly outside the reach of most young kids. So I can't say anything in particular.
Cathy, as you listed us as friends, and because we're weird.
We are very strange.
So, how do you? Are you writing about? I know you are. About what what's going on in the world right now in terms of American power change of and male toxic masculinity and all that, you know?
No, I kind of tend to steer away from all that, you know, the whole gender thing. Yeah, I think there's enough people writing about that and on Twitter about all that. At the moment I'm not, Larry. As I said, I've only begun the second collection, so yeah, that's so far.
Hi Cathy, I've been lucky enough to hear a lot of the rest of your work as well besides your poems, and one thing I'm curious about is I think you are such a good comic writer. Your short stories, one or two plays I've heard of yours, pieces of your novels, they're hilarious and you've a really good way of, we've all been in stitches, you can be really, really funny. And yet, I wouldn't call your poems funny, so I'm just a bit curious, where does the sense of humour go when you're writing your poems? Or am I just picking it up incorrectly, or is it the wrong medium?
No, you're absolutely right. I'm a total Jekyll and Hyde character. Yeah. So I have the dark side and the light side, and I admit to that. I've always been like that. Yeah, so the poetry probably touches on the more thoughtful me, and but I find humour in so much, you know. So when I'm writing stories and plays, the ones you've heard, yeah, I can bring in the comedic qualities and whatever. But it goes back to what I was saying to Ger. You know, that first poem deals with that, the light and the dark. And I suppose even as a child I was aware of that, even in myself, you know. But I suppose I would always, in life, I would always strive for the fun side. But I kind of feel at peace in poetry to delve into what's not the fun side, you know. So, and I think it's important to do that, because if you're going to put your work out there, be honest about everything, really. So, yeah. So.
Thank you, Cathy.
Oh, Martin, I'm scared.
I was going to ask two questions, but one of them is answered. Is that your vision is visual rather than intellectual. Coming from here, they come from your vision. Is that correct? I would think you answered that already, saying.
That's why I'm scared. I knew I had a reason to be scared. Is it fair to say it's visual rather than intellectual? Not necessarily. I'd say you need to employ the intellect to create the visual imagery. Yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Okay.
The question I wanted to ask really was, do you say your poems as you're writing them? This is for a little advice I'm looking for, or do you? Are they sayings or readings? In the end, is poetry saying or reading? Is it words or is it sound or sequence of words? That concept.
Is it sayings or reading? I think it's a way of seeing. You know, it's a way of seeing things.
Do you say your poems as you make them?
Oh, do I say no? I don't. I don't. It's I just no. Whatever comes into my head. Yeah. Okay. You went easy on me there, Martin. I thought you'd be a lot tougher.
Cathy.
Oh,
I
Ger.
don't need that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fantastic. We now know of you. You'll be glad to know me, you know. Just two short questions.
Yeah.
How do you write? Do you write with a pen or do you write on your laptop?
Both, Ger.
Okay.
Yeah. So mostly on the laptop. You know, in recent times it would be on the laptop. But if I'm out and about, or if I have a notepad and pen, I'll jot down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, there is a bit of a difference.
Yeah.
It can be more fluid on the paper.
Yeah.
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 And I was going to say, but where do you write? Do you write anywhere?
I write I have a room upstairs where I write, but I could write in the bedroom, I could write in the kitchen or in the car.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you're out and about?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay, thanks then.
Well, if that's it, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Please do buy the book and enjoy it. Cathy will be available here to sign the book. I'd like to thank Revival Press for organising today, and congratulations to Cathy.